Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Janice Castle, and I'm excited to welcome both our audience here in person and online to the Hartford Board of Education Candidate Forum. We're here today to hear from candidates. Can you? All right, can you hear me? All right, thank you again. And again, welcome to the Board of Education Forum. We're here today joined by candidates who are seeking your vote for positions on the Board of Education for Hartford Public Schools. As you know, currently the polls are open for early voting. You can currently vote at Hartford City Hall up until Election Day on November 4th, where you can also vote in your regular polling locations. We are glad that you joined us today for this important conversation. Education is the key to success. We all know it, we all believe it, and we are here with candidates who are seeking your vote. I am going to ask each of them to do a brief introduction and share with you in 1 to 2 minutes why they are running for office and why they deserve your vote. So we will begin with Tyrone.
Thank you, Janet. Good afternoon. My name is Tyrone Walker. Currently, I'm the second vice chair for the Hartford Board of Education. I'm completing my first term as a Board of Ed member, and I thank you for your endorsement and support through my first term, and I'm seeking your support and your vote to continue to serve you as a Board of Ed member. The thing that moves me the most is delivering on our promise for rigorous education and education that's accessible to the young people and the students of Hartford. We want to deliver on that promise. I think in the first term, the board approved new curriculum for reading, and that curriculum has rolled out, and based on the science of reading, it's doing good work, but I think there's opportunity for us to improve access of that education to students, and unleashing our educators to really tailor it and to deliver in ways that can bring more value, more educational attainment for our young people. And I think that centering on educational access and attainment for young people is one of the things that drives me, and it will be an area where I want your support so that I, the board member, can continue to deliver on that promise to deliver rigorous, high-quality education to the young people of this city.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Krister Estrada Perez. I am a proud graduate of Hartford Neighborhood Schools. I went to Kennelly and then graduated from Weaver High School, class of 2008. Shout out to Weaver Beaver for life. And it means a lot to me, right? Like a lot of our young people, it wasn't perfect, right? There was a lot of challenges being in a city where a lot of our education is often underfunded in terms of what our access, right, is. When you think about the state of Connecticut, where your zip code really matters about what access and quality of education you can have because of structural issues that we've created. These are choices that we've made as a state, and as a city, we have to contend with those choices. And so for me, what drives me to be in this space is, I was born in Caguas, Puerto Rico, but this is my adopted city. I have been here, I have gone through school here, I had the opportunity to graduate from Weaver and then go to college. Was a first generation college student, graduated with a ton of debt, just like a lot of my colleagues and friends have, right? And so, but I wanted to stay in the city because often we're told, you get your education, you get out and you leave Hartford. I wholeheartedly reject that notion. We have to stay here because our city has poured so much into us, and it is our turn to pour back into our communities. And to me, that means, for me, it was education. It was our ability, for me, those 8 hours that I spent at school, having experienced so much at home, were times that I can be with friends, that I can have access to things, that I can have some level of support from adults around me. And it takes a village, and that village for me was often found in the schools that we are a part of. And the adults, and today I want to be one of those adults that helped me make sure that I crossed the finish line, that I stayed, and that I felt loved and cared for. I often think about Dr. Stringer during my last year at Weaver, when I had to leave Hartford as a crisis, as a domestic violence survivor, and had to get bussed in from Middletown in a battered women's shelter to be here. They had to find money to be able to do that, and so it wasn't as disruptive for me to not quit on my last year of high school, right? So for me, it's about making sure our young people have access to the quality of education they deserve, that young people see themselves reflected, that they see that they are people willing to fight for their access, for their right to have quality education, and for our ability to say that we've done, there's this narrative that we are not enough, and every day we are proof, and this board and members of this board who have graduated from our schools are proof that that is not true, that we are, even with the impacts that we receive, we still do so much, and we are able to bring so much to our community. And so what would that even look like if we actually had the resources that we deserved, if we actually had the access that we deserve, if we had people who were willing to fight and champion for those resources and fight for our young people in our communities? And to me, that looks like educators who have what they need, support staff that have what they need and are paid well. 80% of our support staff usually comes from people who live in Hartford, right? So making sure those folks are provided for, because then that is the village that is going to ensure that our young people are taken care of. We are giving our youngest, our precious young people to these adults to take care of. What a better way to make sure that they have the access and resources that they need, whether that be paraprofessionals, behavioral tech, access to adequate curriculum that they are reflected in, right? That acknowledges the differences of their lived experiences, but that also has resources for the things that we don't often encounter, whether that be a fire, resources to clothing, resources to food, because we know that our young people often struggle with access to food, right? And so we have to think about it holistically, and as somebody who's experienced a lot of that, what a perfect opportunity for me to be able to join the board. This is my first term on the board. I was able to provide some support at the legislative session to make sure we were out there and we were advocating for more. And I'm excited to continue that work and to continue to bring that, not just fighting spirit, but that awareness that we are owed more and that we deserve to go get more, and that our young people are worth the fight, and that they're worth the time and energy we put into making sure that the system is as strong as that it could be, to make sure our families and our young people and our educators are taken care of.
Thank you. Francois?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Francoise Darostel Ledger, and I am a Hartford native. My family is from Haiti. I'm coming up on the end of my first term as Vice Chair for the Hartford Board of Education. I am also an educator, so I bring an educator lens to the board. I worked for Hartford Public Schools some years back as a teacher, so I was able to understand and play an active role as an educator and see what the students needed, see what the teachers needed. And now on the other side, I'm able to be an advocate, be that voice for those educators who have certain concerns and certain issues and certain situations that need to be addressed. So I'm able to do that. I am passionate about education. I believe in equity in education for all children. And I'm also looking forward to doing more work and continuing this work because it takes a village. And I'm also working with the community members. We have, for my first term, we have, as you can see, we have a new superintendent, and that was not an easy feat to actually hire a new superintendent, the whole interview process, the vetting, and I'm also pretty much here to be that be a part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem. Growing up, I did not have any teachers who looked like me. So that's one of the reasons that I became an educator. So now, as a board member, people who look like me, kids who come from other countries, they're able to see that there are people who are on the board, and they can, my belief is that you can't be what you can't see. So I am sitting in this role, and I'm doing the work, and I believe in service, and so I'm here to do what needs to be done.
Thank you, Shante.
Hello, I just realized I left my glasses at home. So, but I could see you all your lovely faces. Shante Brody, I am coming off of, I'm ending my second term on the Board of Education. I am a Hartford native. I went through Hartford Public Schools all of my schooling, except for I had an experience in 7th grade where I was bussed out, a part of the Project Concern now called Open Choice. That only lasted a year for me. And I've had one child already come through the system, and I have another child currently in the system. I have been a substitute teacher for 4 years. I've been on school governance councils, PTOs, did a lot of district-wide and parent engagement with a couple of the previous administrations before serving on the board. What I want to do and what I think I've been trying to do for all of my years on the board is reminding everyone why we're here. We're here to serve students. And if everyone can get like with that mindset, I think we will continue to improve our school system. As some may have said, we're very excited. We have a new superintendent who has started a momentum that we're trying to continue. But basically, if it was one thing that keeps me grounded and focused, is that everyone has a job to do, and the kid is at the center of that job.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone for the introduction. So today I'm going to guide us through a set of questions that I will pose to our panelists, and then later on we will open up the floor for questions from our audience. So I'm going to jump right in. A couple days ago we saw a press conference around the future of Hartford schools, the potential for consolidations, and we know that residents are worried about the decline in enrollment and potential school closure. So I want to hear from you not only your thoughts on that, but also how you will engage the community in shaping the future.
Okay, so you jump right on in. I thought that question was going to come a little later on, but we there, like, okay. So just to be clear, consolidation, which I don't like the term consolidation, is actually school closure. Let's be clear. That is not the job of anyone other than these 4 people you see sitting here and 4 others that are appointed. It's not the job of the mayor. It's not the job of anyone but the school board. So let's be clear, when school closings happen, it's this governing body that oversees that and makes that decision. So what we're seeing in the news is the will of some people, but not the will of the school board. So I wanted to land that. Nothing that, and I think I speak for the entire board when I say that we would never do anything to our community. We have over the years, I think, proven that we do things with the community, especially when we're making decisions for buildings, for families, for workers, for everyone. So what you saw in the news was just the will of the mayor, but that we haven't said that's our will. And I don't know if we want to go further into, because it's layered. That what we saw in the news is more than one thing. So you'll see, and I'll give others the opportunity, and maybe I'll have the opportunity to speak, because it is many layers that I think the public needs to be made aware of, but I want to make room for others to make comments.
And if you can please also add in how you plan to engage with the community on shaping the future footprint of our school.
Okay, because so earlier this year, yeah, we're still in 2025. It's been a year. We actually voted on a strategic operating plan that shows where we're going as a district. So to have that plan passed by the board, it was so much community engagement. So the board is not confused on the future and where we want to go. We've made that clear with our votes in operating in our strategic operating plan. So that's the last time that we've said this is the direction we're going, and we're still on that course. Of course, we have a new superintendent who is absorbing Hartford and all the great things here, and looking at our challenges to see what we could do better, the things we've heard from our community, the things we've heard from our teachers. I know that doesn't escape him, but I've been getting very, very good feedback and a very positive momentum around us moving forward. And us moving forward, I do want to say that includes us having adequate facilities for our children, and what is probably in the way of us moving forward in the future, for the future of Hartford Public Schools, is a pause on construction.
I mean, I think for me, the question about school consolidation or school closures is nothing that I think we have to be really strategic about how we approach this conversation, because we can do a lot of damage to our communities if we are rash about taking an action. Hartford Public Schools is not an easy system. We have a lot of layers that intervene in how we can maneuver, right? We have SCHEF, we have money that for schools that have already been renovated, we have schools that are pending renovation, and some of them have been paused. So this is a very complicated system that requires the intention, and requires data, and it requires a thorough process, right? To even begin to think about what is school consolidation or closures. And ultimately where I land is the why. Right? Why is it? It's not just enrollment, right? Part of the enrollment conversation is the reality of the fact that we need buildings that our young people, and access to resources that our young people, we should be attracting them to stay in our city. We should be attracting our young people and our families to stay in our city, and to choose to stay in Hartford Public Schools. So for me, anything that is not data driven, nothing that there is no, aside from finances that have a lot to do with the state and the lack of really investment in schools, that's a state level, right? Like we have already seen, and I'm gonna take it national, state, and then local, right? We've already begun to see, as a trajectory in our country, a lack of funding and a big divestment in education at the federal level. We're seeing that put into overdrive with the current administration, but you also see that happening at the state, right? Where we are choosing as a state entity, as legislators, our governor, not to spend more on education. We are, even when we think about something as simple as tuition and how much we pay per student, we know that we do not actually get enough for what we need to be able to do and what we are owed. Because it's the difference between need and owed, right? It is owed to us to be able to provide a quality education. And so to me, we've already seen that divestment and defunding. When you're being asked to do the same level of work in a country that has gotten more expensive, where things are more expensive, right? With the same level of money you had 10 years ago, we are actively defunding our education system. And so to me, this is all has a lot to do with money, and money cannot be the center reason why we're choosing to go down this path. We have to have a clear understanding, and number one, we have to want to attract more of our students to come back. We have to study why enrollment is low to begin with. We have to study which schools are going to be the most impacted if this is a decision that people in powerful places want to make, right? None of that says that we are on path to do that as a board, because there's a lot of questions that we still have questions for. Is there going to be magnet schools? Is there going to be neighborhood schools? Which schools are actually lacking enrollment? Are Hartford Public Schools the only one that are having low enrollment, and other choice programs also lacking enrollment? And if so, are they being held to the same standards? There's a lot of layers that we have to really take into consideration, and to me, anything that rushes through that process, anything that rushes and does not have the data to back it up, it's a no-go, right? Because we have to do this well. It is such a disruption to our communities, right? Our teachers, you know, we often talk about how maintaining our educators. Maintaining our educators comes with the reality that we can't keep switching the system they work under every other year, because that means, do I have stability here? Am I gonna have stability next year? Same thing for our young people. So I think whatever choice we decide to make as a collective, number one, just like we had community input for the superintendent search, we will have to have a robust community conversation, robust intake from our community, whether that be surveys, in-person meetings, listening sessions with the superintendent, listening sessions with the board, attendance at PTAs, attendance at SGCs. That is a robust level of feedback that we need to be able to get at the hard core of the issue.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to chip in on that question?
Yeah, thanks, Janice. I wanted to lift up that we are seeing from our CFO this year that the number of students enrolled in Hartford Public Schools has declined this year. But I would like to add some context to that. Right, in 2022, the state, and trying to fulfill the requirements of the chef agreement, purpose to open as many open choice seats to meet the demand of students who wanted to enter open choice. And so we've seen upwards to 2,000 plus seats open in that open choice space in the last few years. So it shouldn't be surprising if more and more seats are opened and you're marketing to young people that they're going to move to these opportunities. And so I want you to know that when we looked at our cost structure, right, as much as we have needs in Hartford, it's not just that running Hartford costs money. Yes, that's true. But our gap, and you know we have debts every year in running the school district, a big chunk of that debt we've identified is the cost of these students leaving the district. Even though they leave the district, they're still our students. We still pay for wherever they go to be educated. And it costs more for us, for them to leave the district than for them to stay in the district. And that transportation expense is pretty high. If you took that off the table, we don't have a deficit. And so I want you to understand it's not like Hartford Public School can't manage to run itself. But this open choice and the impact it has on the district is a cost, and that cost is driving some of these challenges that we're having. And so our superintendent and the board has envisioned and purpose to then try to make the Hartford Public Schools more attractive. Because one answer to this is having Hartford Public Schools have programming and have opportunities that draw our students back to the district. And so the opportunity we see is promoting the positive of Hartford. The superintendent's been talking about the Promise Scholars program, then an increase in that. I think there is an opportunity to look at programs and being leveraged and combined together so we can have greater offerings to our students. There's an opportunity to potentially finding ways to open up some of these magnet programs so that our students can have opportunities that they don't have to go out, they can stay within. And so I want to say that there's so many, to me, there's a lot of energy that we need to focus on how do we strengthen our own internal programs, right? And how do we make the opportunity to stay in Hartford more attractive? And that's much more the focus than just merely saying, do we close the school or not close the school? That doesn't really get the issue. It's making Hartford schools and programs more attractive that really strengthens us and allows the students that we are currently serving who may choose to leave the district to reconsider and come back home, and in doing so, make Hartford more financially stable.
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you. So what I would like to add to that is that before we make any decision as a board of education, who, as Chairperson Brody said, it's Hartford Board of Education who is the governing body for this decision. We need to look at the empirical data. How much would we save in closing schools versus doing something else? And another thing is, if we were to close a school, and we move those children from one neighborhood, one area to another, we have to look at how those children are going to get to school. We have to look at the money that's going to be leaving that particular area. And we have to look at transportation. That can also be an issue, because if those children were accustomed to walking to school, now they may have to take a school bus and go somewhere else. It can also impact the ability for family and community engagement. So if parents who are home, who are able to walk to the school or walk their children to school, they won't be able to do that anymore. Also, if there are people in the community who have eyes on these young people, that will leave as well. So those are things that we need to look at. We also need to be mindful of the impact that this is going to have on families, on the community. One thing I wanted to say is that if you have teachers who are invested in the children, in the young people, and I always call them children because they're all children, they're our children as an educator. If they are invested in the children, in the community, then they will do, with the resources that they are given, and also with support from the community, they will do what needs to be done to have those children want to be in school. All those children want to be educated. Children want to be in school. Children want to feel that their community is growing. And one thing I want to say is, another thing that I want to say is, as a child who, I didn't attend Hartford Public Schools. I attended Catholic school as a child growing up, but I lived in Hartford my whole life. My family looked at, it was called Project Concern at the time, so the open choice program, in having the opportunity to leave the community and go to a school outside of the district, whether it's, I won't say names of districts because I don't want cities, because I don't want to target anyone, but say they were able to go somewhere farther away. That means that child, that would have meant that I would have had to wake up extra early and get placed on a bus. Now, I'm not sure if people are aware, but a lot of problems, a lot of behavior problems, a lot of bullying. Bullying is a very big problem, which is a growing problem. A lot of these behaviors take place on the school bus. So children get up extra early, they get on these buses, they have to go perhaps a farther distance. And what my family would think about was, if I send my child to another district or another town, then what happens on the weekends? What happens when there's perhaps some type of community event in that other community? How will my child get there? So I think that we need to strengthen the involvement of the community and have the voices of the community, and also have people, be transparent. We need to be transparent so that folks can know what are the pros and cons of closing a school. What are other options that are on the table? So I know that we are in the process of having an RFP where there's going to be a study of all of the options with regards to saving money or bringing more money into Hartford Public Schools, so that if school closure may be one of them, is something that we are looking at, but it's not the only thing that we're looking at.
Thank you. As you talk about all the options that are available to families, we know that many families feel that expectations for students are not high enough. How would you ensure that Hartford students are challenged and supported to reach their full potential? And if we can be brief with our remarks, that would be great. Thank you. Does anyone want to take that one first?
So, as a board member, as a Hartford Public School Board, Hartford Board of Education member, I chair the Teaching and Learning Committee. As an educator, it's a nice committee to chair because I'm able to actually see the ins and outs and all of the intricacies of the different curriculum that come our way. So what we're looking at, and also working with the State Department of Education, we're able to look at what are the Common Core, the content standards that need to be addressed. And we have a team in Hartford Public Schools that are constantly reviewing, are constantly looking at this information, are reviewing this data, and empowering families so that they can be aware of what they can do at home with their children. So it's not just what's being done in school, but what's happening at home. So if children, and I know that reading is also a very hot topic, is a very big issue, because if students aren't able to read on grade level or above grade level, then once they get to third grade, it's going to be an uphill battle for them. And it also affects different areas of curriculum. So it affects math, so that when they get a little older and they're looking at math problems, word problems, if they're not able to read, then they can't solve these word problems. So what needs to happen is there needs to be more parent education, more family education, and we also have Hartford Parent University, where they're working to engage families and educate families with regards to curriculum and other areas that they can support their children. So one thing I want to say is it takes a village.
Thank you.
One thing you were really great about saying all the things we've been working on, I think that I would like to add is that our young people learn in a multitude of ways, right? Working, we just had the ceremony where we were giving awards to the young kids who've read through the Reading Challenge program, right? We need to be able to, that was through a partnership with the library. We have to continue. I was a library kid. I was raised by a library kid, and I'm not the only board member who would say they're a library kid, right? So we have to have strategic partnership with places like our libraries, because they have access to our young people on the weekends after school. They have access to community events and parent engagement as well. To your point about working with parents that are already in our orbit, to be able to talk a little bit about ways, not just what they can do, but how we can support them in the process. We are also in a really unique opportunity. We have a new superintendent. We have to see where are our scores now, where are we, and what are those measures that we can put into place to shift as we are moving forward, and then measure again to see what increases, where areas of care need to be put so that we do better, and what areas we're doing really good in, right? But to me, that looks like also working through, even with the limited resources that we may have, because we also have to think about kids. Our kids learn through art. Our kids learn through music. Our kids learn through after-school programs. Our kids learn through athletics, right? Those are all the various ways that our young people learn and are in community with one another, and it allows them to create a culture where they want to be with each other, where they want to be in space with one another, and it encourages that, because the learning is coming from multiple places. So I think in addition to that, making sure that we understand that it is not art and music and after-school activities are not just in addition to instruction, they are part of instruction and such a key part of instruction for a lot of our young people, because you learn math in music, you learn math in art, you learn so much about the world through those mediums. And so, and it's one of the often ways that we can engage young people that they're really excited about, right? And that, right? So we can get through reading in a way that's fun for them. So yeah.
Thank you. So a question that I'm going to pose to Shante and Tyrone. Hartford has one of the largest opportunity gaps in Connecticut. How would you ensure that resources like experienced teachers, technology, and enrichment opportunities are distributed equitable across all schools?
Yeah, thanks, Janet. I'm going to take the privilege to add a couple comments on the previous question while we talk about this opportunity gap. But the rigor, to me, and rigor and challenge go hand in hand, and then challenge and support goes hand in hand. And so I can see the idea of maximum support for students, but then also to maximize the expectation. And one of the things that I championed that did happen in the last year or so was looking at our grading policy. And so we've reformed the grading policy, and we're still looking to strengthen that. And we want grading to reflect higher academic standards for students. In addition, we have right now this idea of on track and off track for students in high school. And the state standard is, as long as you have a D and you're passing, you're considered to be on track. And I know there's school districts in Connecticut that have raised the bar that has C being on track for their students. And so while I'm not saying that students can't pass a class if they have a D, I think we're underserving students by telling students who have a D that, oh yeah, you're on track, where I think we should look at potentially raising the bar to have C be what we call on track. If you pass with a D, that's okay, but someone needs to tell you, if you got a D, you really need to pick it up some. You need to improve and strengthen what you're doing. And saying that, offering supports, we have tutoring, we can expand tutoring, and that's why a bridge to our partners. We have partners in the community, Catholic Charities, Boys and Girls Club, and the Village, who provide enrichment, who provide tutoring, and I think there's an opportunity to strengthen that by having teachers work along with our community partners to target tutoring to students with high needs and to grow that, because students do need support if we ask them to achieve more. In addition, there's the opportunity that's provided by, I can't think of the acronym, but they support youth development and works. And so we've grown internship opportunities for young people at the high school level. They seem to be engaged in it and enjoying it. And I think there's opportunity to grow internship and shadowing engagement around like public safety, like fire and police, but also to prepare young people for the jobs of the future here in the area, working with the works organizations to help build youth experiences while in high school. The other thing that there's an opportunity for expanding a partnership is with the trades. They seem to have some interest now in getting our young people certified. And so now we're offering certifications in certain areas. So let's grow that so young people can actually leave high school with a certification so they can actually maybe enter somebody's apprenticeship program. So I'm hoping I'm answering where I think we can target some partnerships that also kind of maps into, let's expect more from young people, but let's give them more support so they can get there and reach those goals that we want them to obtain for themselves.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Janice. So what I think, when I think of an opportunity, we have, Connecticut has one of the biggest opportunity, used to be called another gap. They changed the description of the gap every few years. But as long as we have a state of Connecticut, and as long as we have a city that is not going to say, when they look at their budget, the one thing that they're going to do is make sure schools are properly funded, that Hartford Public Schools is properly funded, we will continue to have that gap. If our CFO can look at numbers and say, wow, for Hartford children that live in Hartford but do not attend Hartford Public Schools, and Hartford has to pay for those students out of our Hartford Public Schools budget. The state of Connecticut does provide money for those students, but they don't provide enough. So when you crunch the numbers and you're able to see, wow, we're spending approximately $30 million for those children to leave Hartford, and wow, we had to cut $30 million out of our budget. It doesn't take much to say, why isn't someone else kicking in? Because think about it like this. If we're told a lawsuit happened, right? Because Hartford children were not getting what they were supposed to get. I get that. But when we have the state negotiating and agreeing, because the plaintiff is going to want what they want, but the state, I'm thinking, they have a responsibility to children. In particular, we're talking about today to Hartford children. So you negotiate and you settle with an agreement this time that leaves the children who decide to stay in Hartford still suffering more. It makes no sense to me. So until the state of Connecticut and the city of Hartford decides that there will not be a Hartford student that is under-resourced financially, we will always have that gap. And we're feeding into children wanting to leave because now the mayor has decided not to construct schools that the state is going to provide a 95% reimbursement for. So some of us on this board voted for that, right? We went through the Hartford school, Hartford Public Schools went through an extensive process, and we don't take credit for that. So the staff came up with, they wrote a grant application. The grant application is voted on by city council, is voted on by us to say, okay, let's now we can submit it after those two entities and the then mayor who thought it was a great idea and a priority to get our schools renovated. So if that passes, right, and then we know that a driver in making decisions for your kids to go to what school, are you going to choose the school that's sitting on hillside that when it rains, they got buckets collecting water? Are you going to say, well, let me check out this application and maybe I could get my kid out of town to a school that's state of the art? So we are, by pausing construction, we are further pushing our kids out of town. It's just a reality. And on top of that, we don't control our magnet school seats. So Hartford Public Schools do not. The state decides how many seats are open. So not only do you have to choose the school that's not renovated, the school that is renovated, that's right across the street from your house, the state is holding those seats and not letting the school be fully enrolled, so you can't go there either. So a way that we thought as a school system over the years is to say, at least let's level the playing field with facilities, and we thought that was a priority, but now we're waiting for that pause to come off.
Thank you for that. You know, as you talk about all these resources, we know that teacher turnover and shortage continues to affect Hartford schools. What policy would you support to attract and retain talented educators, particularly educators of color?
So, being an educator of color, it makes a huge impact on children who look like me. And I want to say that cultural competency, I want to say something really quickly about cultural competency. That is a critical piece. If you don't have teachers who are not able to relate to the students and understand and empathize and have compassion with what these students are going through, it's very difficult for them to be able to be successful. We have a partnership with Teach for America, and we also do a great deal of recruiting. We have gone to visit some HBCUs, I believe, and also working with universities that are in the area and colleges that are in the area to attract individuals, teachers of color, folks who want to go into the teaching profession. But the thing is, can we do more? Absolutely. Because if we don't have cultural competency, then a lot of these students, we can have the best curriculum. We can have the greatest, the greatest programs, but if we don't have teachers who are not able to connect with the students, and also if the professional development, the professional learning opportunities are not available, and the teachers are not able to apply that information properly and effectively so that the students can learn, then we're going to continue to have these problems. Teacher recruitment is a problem, and let's be clear, teacher recruitment is a problem everywhere, because with COVID, a lot of educators left the profession. However, there's a huge teacher shortage, so we need to address the teacher shortage, and also incorporate the teachers of color piece.
I think in many ways, one of the things that we should do more of, and we do already some of it, is work with our colleges and universities in the state. One of the big contributors to the teacher shortage in general are three ways, right? One of those things is the fund, like money, how much educators get paid in comparison to how much money they have to get in student debt to be able to go to get their degree and their certification. And if you want to do special education, or if you want to have more of an emphasis or a master's degree, that costs more money. So the amount of money that educators are getting in versus the amount of money they have to pay out even for something as simple as student debt, which is what allows them to teach, that's something that as a state we have to take a hold of, because teachers are not going to want to go into that level of debt not to be able to get compensated and be able to take care of themselves, right? And we know this is not just a problem in Connecticut. We know this is a problem writ large because we continue to devalue and defund education, whether that be early childhood, K through 12, and higher ed. So that's one of those things, right? That is particularly true for folks of color who have been traditionally left out of economic justice, right? We tend to have to borrow more every step of the process when we're in higher education. We end up graduating with more student debt. That's particularly true for Black women and Black educators, right? So in order for us, we have to tackle the reality of it cannot be that expensive to become an educator, and we have to be working for solutions beyond the Board of Education as a state to see what we can do. And that means partnering with our local colleges and universities to see what can be done about that, what programs can be done to lessen that load. The other part of it is resources and access to support systems, right? When I worked in K through 12 education, I did a lot of equity in education work where I got to go through different parts of the state to talk to different educators about racism, colonization, and inequities in the schools, right? Whether that inequity showed up in the fact that white teachers treated their students of color in predominantly white spaces, or the ways in which our students were not seen or are reflected in the educators or the curriculum, right? But what's also true is that when you go to certain districts or certain places, their lack of support staff because of the lack of funding is also an issue, right? We need to have more paras that are better paid. We need more behavioral techs that are better paid. We need more access to special education teachers, which is the same issue with our certification for just other teachers as well that we need to address. Right? And so part of that is creating a system that acknowledges those support systems are equally as important as educators, because it allows our main educators to do their work. Behavioral techs being there, paraprofessional supports being there, reading instruction support being there, translation services being there, those things allow our educators to actually do the work that they do and lessen the burnout, therefore lessen the transition and the need to quit the field. A lot of our educators quit the field because they are burnt out, and that is across the spectrum, across the United States and in Connecticut, because we've defunded education so much. So we need to create an environment where our educators are supported, so that, and even if we can't get to it right away, we can have a short-term, medium-term, and long-term strategy about how we approach this to make sure that those folks get what they need with what we have, right? But I think looking at the bigger issue of inequities in general and what stops teachers of color and what stops teachers in particular, their recruitment, addressing that, right? And then addressing material realities of what we can control, which is how much we pay our folks, how much support and professional development that they have, how much support they feel they have from their administrators, how much support they feel like they have from their Board of Education and they're being listened to. So I'll keep it short, but that's a little bit of what I would think would support that, and particularly recruitment of educators, and particularly recruitment of educators of color.
I see Shantae has it. And just to the audience, I'll be coming to you if you have any questions once they've had a chance to respond to this one.
Okay, I don't think we've done some things. Excuse me. We have maybe a 6% vacancy rate. That's huge. So a lot of work has been done. We've been putting the pressure on as board members about recruitment strategies and not always going to contractors for our staff, but to actually have our own staff. Also, in our most recent teacher negotiation, the pay for a first-year teacher has increased. So all of those things did happen last year. So a lot of work was done last year to make us better. Right now, we have sort of a good problem in that we are having to decide. We have more staff than we anticipated for the amount of students. We lost 1,400 students because of the Chef versus the state lawsuit that opened up more seats in the suburbs. So we want to stop that because we're improving on that staffing. We're improving on raising how, the teacher pay, but we're not doing anything about retaining students because it's something outside of what we control affecting that. So I think we have to get better legislatively on the things that we can control that, or have a say in it, and not be like a bystander watching it happen, to be a advocate in those spaces.
Okay. Thank you, Tyrone.
Great. Thanks, Janet. I want to second what Board Chair Brody just mentioned. I do think increasing teacher salaries and increasing starting salaries for special ed teachers, in addition, definitely has helped recruitment. I did want to target the minority teacher aspect. In minority teacher recruitment, it's going to be a national search. Let's just be honest what that means, right? We're not going to find everyone we need right here local. And so if we're going to recruit talented teachers of color from around the region or from the nation, one, we've got to have certification be streamlined and easier to obtain here in the state. You're not going to convince somebody to come up here to Connecticut and give up a perfectly good situation they may have where they live, even though we can offer more money, if we can make them jump through hurdles and hoops to get certified. So there's opportunities to me to look at reciprocity or some kind of accelerated process so that we can get some experienced teachers. There are experienced teachers who clearly are working in places in America where they make much less than the salaries we offer here. But it can't just be money. We've got to also show them a pathway where they can become fully fledged tenured members of our school districts. The other thing is we got to strengthen and grow our own. I think we touched on it, but there are students right here in Hartford who we should be able to incentivize to go to schools of education and become teachers and stay in Connecticut. We have promised scholarships. Why can't we do something similar for these students. If they're a high-need area, find some way to target those students and say, hey, we can maybe forgive your loans if you complete the school, come back and work in the districts for which there's needs. And beyond the growing your own, I think we touched on strengthening these programs to let our paras or other support staff go through the path to become teachers themselves. Because in the areas of paras, we do have a lot of local residents working in those areas, and if we make it easier for them to pursue that dream to become certified educators, then I think we also help ourselves out. So I just want to touch on those things that we're doing, but we can strengthen those things and do more to grow our own.
Do we have any questions in the audience? Okay, I'll make my way out. But as I make my way out to get the question from the audience, one question that I have for you all is, all sound very passionate about making policy and helping to improve the school system. How will you measure whether those district policies are actually improving student outcomes, and what will you do if they're not working?
So we're constantly looking at the data. So data is critical. And we can compare our data for Hartford Public Schools to other districts, other towns by looking at EdSite, which is a website where all of the information from every public school district in Connecticut, you can go to it. And I'm going to put in a little plug for CABE, which is Connecticut Association of Boards of Education. They actually work with parents, work with community members, work with individuals, whoever wants to learn on how to use EdSite so that they can be able to empower themselves and see, okay, what is this district doing? How many teachers of color do they have? How many students of color do they have compared to white students? And also, what they can do is, as we get the data, if there's something that we need to revisit, then whether it's the curriculum, whether it's professional development, how much professional development has been given to these teachers with the curriculum that they're working with. Another thing is, if we look at behaviors and we look at mental health, what kind of mental health services are our students receiving? Let's look at poverty. Let's look at housing. We have to look at the whole picture, the whole child. And if one thing I can say is, you can have curriculum, you can have the teachers, but if students are hungry, if students are tired, if students are not well, they cannot learn.
Does anybody else want to?
My question is, as a casual viewer, just a resident sitting at home watching the Board of Education meetings, one of the things that I've noticed is on the consent agenda, for instance, there's a lot of contracts that are awarded to outside agencies and organizations. Some of them, I wonder, why aren't we doing those things ourselves? So I was just wondering if any, and this is to anyone, if you can speak to that. It's just a wondering that I have when I'm sitting there watching the board meeting and I hear a 6-figure number being awarded to an entity, and I'm like, well, is there a way that we internally, like within the administration, that could be done instead of sending that money to an outside organization?
Can you, just to come back, if you can give us an example?
She don't have to give any examples. One of my pet peeves was, and you could run the tape back, if it has a contract on the consent agenda previously, because we didn't have any contracts per se, this month, I never voted for it, or I asked for it to be pulled out of the consent agenda. And reasons why they make it to consent agenda, because everything that we vote on has gone through committee. So if there's a general consensus in committee that we flushed it out, members were comfortable, it usually lands there. But I just do not like any contract on consent. Because not every board member is a member of the committee. So will they have, and it just doesn't look right, like pull it out of consent. Why was it in consent in the first place? But to the question, I've always asked, if this agency that finds paraprofessionals, right? They found them so they can contract with us. Why couldn't we find them? They're the same people. So I was always confused about that. We're contracting with an agency to find us substitute teachers or paraprofessionals, and we're not doing it. Realizing, though, a reality is, over the years, central office has been cut. So we've been asking a lot of our staff to do more, and we're not paying them anymore. So we have to understand that reality. But if they can find the people, we can find the people. Because if there are people, there are employees as opposed to contracting. But there are some nationally known positions, one being a speech pathologist, that there's a shortage all over the nation. So and a lot of those services are done virtually. It's just not a lot of people in those professions, and that's why some of those are contracted out. Lastly, I will say that I've advocated to put it in, if we're contracting with you and you're finding us staff, it should be something that says, because a lot of those contracts will be like, you can't hire them. I think I had a pretty good fight to get included, that it is something written in that after however long we can offer them employment to become our employees. So that's some of the things that we've tried to do to make it more palatable, but we contract out a lot, and it's not something that I don't think any of us really want to do. But in certain situations, there are shortages all over the nations, and we don't have a choice, because we have to provide a lot of those services to our special needs students that's written in their IEP. So to be in compliance with their IEP, we have to give the service. So it's like, that's how we end up in those situations.
So, yeah, I want to add to that. So, Board Member Brody talked about pulling contracts out the consent agenda. So, as a board member, I'm going to once again say, let's take that on and see if we can challenge ourselves to take all contracts out of consent, right? To at least give voice to what they are. And to directly answer your question, what I seem to be focusing on are these contract continuations. We have partners that have done great work with the district, and I can think about a few right now where they're on their 9th, 10th, or 11th, in essence, continuation. And so where I think there's an opportunity for us is to begin to challenge us as a district to at least address, are we trying to build capacity, right? If someone's been doing something for us, like the rule of thumb we used to have, like, if you borrow from me, that's fine. If I got to borrow from you twice, then it's like, maybe I need my own. If we've been continuing with somebody for 10, 11 years, maybe there's an opportunity that we actually need that capacity in the district ourselves. And I think that's one thing right now we're not asking or challenging ourselves. It won't mean we get there tomorrow, but the example that Board Member Brody brought up was about speech and language pathologists. I got challenged on that by somebody because that's a $3 to $5 million contract every year. And the question I got is, okay, after so many years, can you guys challenge yourselves to go either find or grow your own or do something for that kind of money to go, because she's right, that's not an overnight thing. But right now, there's no evidence to me that we're doing a lot of active things to grow that capacity so eventually we can hire our own speech and language pathologists, even if it takes 5 or 8 years to actually make that a reality. You got to start somewhere. And so I say maybe we can take on those couple of challenges as a board.
Thank you. I have a question, and I guess any one of you board members can answer it. The other day, the mayor had a press conference, still kind of trying to figure out what the press conference was about, because I was in a meeting and had the privilege to videotape and meet the superintendent. The superintendent apparently, along with you board members, seems to have a very different approach and agenda to what the future of the Hartford school system is going to look like. I also want to say something else. Being an activist and an advocate in North End Hartford, what I can say with all assurity is 90% of the mothers and the fathers that I knew in that area got up every single day, sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning, to get their child up, to go to a school, sometimes 20, 30, 40 miles away, because they wanted their child to have the same education in this city that was not being offered to them. So I know this is about politics. I know this is about money. I know you talked about taking away money because this system seems to be devalued, but it's only devalued until they start talking about money. So what are you going to do collectively to work as a board and to work with the superintendent to make sure things are done legally, that you just can't not reconstruct or revitalize or renovate the schools, and that money that's already allocated, 95% of that money is used for the purposes, because every parent I know wants to get up and send their child to the school across the street. And because this happened, and I know Chef versus O'Neill, there was unintended consequences, it just destroyed neighborhoods. It really did. It destroyed community. So what can you do to work with the superintendent to make sure that, first of all, things are done legally, that the mayor just does not come with whoever he's working with and just take away something that the Hartford school system deserves, and that's to have schools that compete with every other school system in this state?
I know we started on that question in the beginning, so if you can just summarize some of what you, how you answered that question in the beginning, please. Or any one of you.
You want to go first?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think there's a lot of, emotion behind that, both on your part and ours. So, number one, I'm going to say that Board Member Brody was here the last time we had consolidations, and the community you talked about, to me, was somewhat decimated around that, with Clark School and with the old Milner School on Vine Street, and then Simpson Waverly School. All the institutions of a community almost were taken down, and it took a lot of community activism to resurrect MLK, which was heading the same direction. And so, number one, I'd say, thank you for your concern and question. Keep up the pressure, because I think community needs to stand with us and even push us, because I can tell you that we get lots of questions about Fred Wish School. It is coming, but the state in some ways redirected us, which kind of delayed us getting that ground broken on it, but it's coming. And so the questions tell me that it's important to that community. The other element here is we have an existing funded program that North End Ascend Pipeline. One of its things it's trying to do is re-knit the community path. You know, you go to certain elementary schools, so they're working both with Sand and with like a Rawson, and then they're kind of strengthening a middle school path. They then get you to Weaver, and so we are trying to re-knit something together, but we got to keep the pressure on there too, so we don't fall back, because you can't have a situation where, oh, you got elementary school, but there's no middle school and no clear pathway to high school. So those two things we have to keep doing. I will be silent about the press conference stuff, so I maybe want to give the opportunity for my other board members to maybe comment on other elements of your question, so I'll just stop there.
So I will say, because I said a little bit.
Here.
So I won't repeat all of what I said earlier, but what we have to be very careful of is what's being said publicly. What's being said publicly is we don't even have enough students in our schools to fill a football team. That's a lie. We haven't mismanaged any funds. We've had a state audit, and the only thing they found was $400,000, which we could possibly save with eliminating a couple positions that they felt were heavy. So we've passed a state audit. If we just gotta, when people make statements, we have to challenge them on their statements. We have, in my opinion, I just feel like Hartford Public Schools is always under attack. If you say you want to close a school and join school communities together to make, I think it was saying a center of excellence. We have many centers of excellence. So it was said as if we don't have a center of, we have students graduating every year with a couple semesters worth of college credits. But what we're trying to create through school construction is leveling the playing field. I'm not going to sit up here and pretend like the north end of Hartford did not take an extreme blow in the last district model of excellence, where we created middle schools again, because middle school students were not getting the proper attention. So we're not going to pretend that our community didn't take a blow. We got some good things. We got Weaver done over. We got MLK. We can't credit that to anyone though, but kind of like our neighborhood activists that were speaking and advocating for that. But I just want for everyone to understand the heaviness of what pausing construction does. It puts a bullseye on the schools that have not been reconstructed. And it further doesn't add up when the state has already approved 95% reimbursement. So we have to start asking the questions of why would we do that? Lastly, I'll say, if we're so-called, what I heard during the press conference is creating centers of excellence. So the thought is you propose to close a school and those children in that school go to another school. If you go into some of our neighborhood schools, we know the challenges we face because we know the communities we live in. We know the parents' struggles. We know all of the systematic things that just are in our neighborhood. So if we know that, and that's in school A and in school B, we're gonna compound that in one space and think we're gonna create a center of excellence. It's a fairy tale. It makes no sense. So our job has always been, we know what's in our schools and we know what we need to improve on, and we know our successes and we know our shining stars. We're not confused about that at all. But we know what improvements we need to do, but we have a brand new superintendent. So imagine you take this new job, you're excited, you're touring the city, people are on with you, like it's people that I know that were harsh critics of Hartford Public Schools, but after understanding and learning the vision of our new superintendent, they're now back in. They're like, I'm pressing the on button, I'm back on with Hartford Public Schools. So while you're at the height of that, he hasn't even fully evaluated. He's done some evaluations, made some changes along the way, but you don't even give him a chance to do a full evaluation, and you're creating this false narrative of Hartford Public Schools to kind of snuff out the light that finally got lit again. So we have to be dedicated to saying those truths of what Hartford Public Schools really is, and not making anyone think that we don't have centers of excellence. My daughter graduated from Hartford Public Schools. When she went to school, she had already 1 year of college credits from high school. What we want to do, though, is make that equitable among all students. And we did that last year, right? We had some schools that were very heavy on access to advanced placement classes and stuff, and we did some leveling out. It was some communities that weren't happy about it, but it was some communities that were very happy about it because now they were going to be getting more opportunities. So please do research and talk to us about what is or is not in our school system, and not listen to a press conference because it is very misleading.
If I can add, I think what's really key too is separation of powers, right? Separation of powers in our municipal government. The Board of Education, even though it has 5 appointed, it has 4 elected and 9 total board members. Our charge is to worry about the Board of Education and our schools. We have to be able to be in partnership to do so. Not one person has a unilateral decision about what happens, certainly not an executive branch. An executive branch, a city council, and Board of Ed members should be working to talk about these things, and to, I think, Chairwoman's point about, Brody's point about being thorough. We have a new mayor, a new superintendent who are new to our running these big systems in our city. As somebody who spent 2 years working on an equity informed school climate assessment for Manchester Public Schools, I couldn't even begin to imagine having conversations about closures or consolidations without having the facts in front of me, without even knowing if that is actually the thing that we should be doing and what is the why behind it. So I think we have to be much more responsible in the way in which we carry these conversations, because it creates a lot of fear and chaos. There is a separation of powers here that has to be respected, and we're seeing that it doesn't often get respected at the national level. We cannot recreate that in the Hartford, we cannot recreate that in our municipal levels, right? And so we have to be able to say, we're going to make this decision that is going to impact our communities, and we know, because it's already happened, right, that it disproportionately impacts Black communities and Latino working class communities, particularly Black communities in the North End. As a graduate of Weaver, people had to fight to keep Weaver open, right, which was heartbreaking to us who graduated from Weaver, the fact that that was even an option, right? And so I think we have to be much more responsible about the way we have conversations about closures, whether we have conversations about consolidations, and when we're having press conferences, or when we're having conversations on how to move forward. Because there are 3 different branches of municipal government here that have to work together, and without having the compiled data to know that this is the right approach, we are really being irresponsible in the way we move forward, because most of us are new to the roles that we are leading, and we are leading a complex system that has lawsuits on top of state mandates, on top of municipal mandates, that we have to thoroughly understand, that our superintendent has to thoroughly understand. To your point about making sure it's legal, we have to become experts quickly about these systems and the way that they interlap with one another. So we have to be much more clear that we are not creating chaos, and that we're actually working together and honoring the fact that there is a separation in municipal government, and that is there for a reason.
Did you?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add to that, and that was kudos, and I ditto everything that you're saying. But once again, we need to look at the empirical data. We need to look at everything. Everything has to be put on the table. It's not just school consolidation / school closure, but we need to look at ways that we are losing money, ways that we can save money, ways that we can bring money back into Hartford Public Schools. And to just say, to put that narrative out there, when it did not come from anyone on this board, it frightens the community. It frightens parents. It frightens kids, because I received phone calls. What are you closing my school? Is my school going to be closed? Which school is going to be closed? Who's losing their job? And and in the time that we're living in right now, where you have families who are, afraid to send, some families who are afraid to send their children to school because they don't know if their children are going to come home. You have children who are afraid to go to school because they don't know if their parent is going to be home when they get out of school to go home. So we are living in very uncertain times, and I think it's very important that we are completely transparent and we look at all of the options that need to be put on the table. And that's why we have this study that's going to be done very soon. So until then, it's very premature to say that we are closing schools. Hartford Public Schools Hartford is a beautiful, is a very rich town, city that has a lot of opportunity. And we have community organizations that can contribute to continuing that excellence and increasing that excellence in Hartford Public Schools. We often focus on the negative. We need to look at the positive that Hartford Public Schools has. We need to look at Hartford Promise, which I know that our new superintendent, who is a 3-time HBCU graduate, has been pushing, even though we have had it in Hartford Public Schools as a partner, Hartford Promise, where if a student who goes through Hartford Public Schools and they live in Hartford, they get their grades, their GPA is at a certain level, they 3.0, and they do what they need to do, they will get $100,000 in college funding scholarship to go to a college of their choice. That's unheard of anywhere else that I know. That is a huge way to attract students. And also look at the benefits. We have so many places, so many spaces that are in Hartford that we need to take advantage of and connect to and tap into so that we don't have to have these conversations.
Thank you. So as we take a moment to reflect on today's conversation, and I give our panelists an opportunity to provide some closing reflections, I want you to share with us, what do you see as some of the challenges ahead for Hartford schools? And as you sit here in hopes that our residents will go out and vote for you, how can they stay in touch with you and hold you accountable as well as you do that in 2 to 3 minutes? I know I'm asking a lot, but just again, 1 or 2 challenges that you see ahead, and how the community can stay with the board and hold the board accountable through this process. Shante, we'll start with you. I see you thinking.
Thank everybody who is here, everybody who tuned in. I think when I think of challenges, I don't think there's a challenge that we haven't faced, but I do think of the challenge of people who we think should be supporters that are working in opposite of us. That scares me. And sometimes you try to understand why. So that is scary. What we have to do is just position ourselves in a way that we are informed and we are connected to some decision makers on all levels. Because if we are not making everyone absolutely sure of where we are as a school system, what our challenges are, and what supports we need, we're allowing someone else to put a narrative out there. I think we're well positioned to just continue with improvement. If we are a community, not just us, but us all as a community, we do need to rally behind our new superintendent, Dr. Andre Townsell, and see just how much better that we can become. We do have a desire to make our school system a place where Families do not want to get up at 5 a.m. to start getting ready to get on a bus to go out of town. We do want that to be our reality. So I'm just asking the community, because when I think of the challenges, I think the challenges are more people than anything. So, and that's sad to say, because I think we have a blueprint that existed that through the new superintendent.
Your mic, please use the other mic.
I do feel that we are going, like we're moving in the right direction. We just need everyone to get on board with Hartford Public Schools. And last thing I'll say is that one of the things I heard at the press conference was an invitation to a table to decide what happens in Hartford Public Schools. The school board, we are the table. I don't care, you can create whatever table you want, but we are the table. So we're asking you to come to the table, the governing body that is responsible for making choices, and help us do it well. We will work with anyone who wants to contribute, but I found that very funny, like even rejecting certain people. If you don't want to do this, you don't come to the table. This is the table. We have 4 other people that make up this table, that we are willing to work with everyone to make this school system better and better each year. So just join with us. We want you to be more excited about Hartford Public Schools, because now I think we're being led in a way that we can do some great things.
Thank you. Francois?
Thank you. And what I would like to add to that is, and also, I encourage everyone, come to a Hartford Board of Education meeting every 3rd Tuesday at 5:30 usually it's at MD Fox on Weathersfield, Franklin Avenue? Maple Avenue, south end of Hartford. Every 3rd Tuesday of the month, 5:30 p.m., please feel free to come to a Hartford Board of Education meeting. There is an opportunity for public comment. And if you want your voice to be heard, if you have a concern, come and sign up and speak. You have 3 minutes and uninterrupted. And, we read this narrative, if you, go past your 3 minutes, there's this little bell that rings and everything. But you have an opportunity to sit at a table that is specifically there for you so that your voice can be heard. Any concern that you have, if you want to say something positive, if there's something negative, any concern, please come. And if you see that something good is happening, come and talk about it. And oftentimes there may be things that we don't know about. We don't know what's happening. We don't have all of the information. But if you bring that information to us and say, you know what, there's a squeaky wheel here. There's like something that let's say it's a tire. If you come to a Board of Education meeting and you say, I noticed this tire is losing some air, then we can address it. We can make sure that air is put in that tire so that that tire is functioning as it should. But if you see that that tire is losing air and you wait until that tire is completely flat to the point where the tire is like you're riding on the rims, and then the rim is damaged, and then you have that tire has to be completely removed and replaced. That's a problem. So transparency, communication. We are here. We're ready to engage. Please come. Also, if you are a parent or if you are a caregiver and your child attends Hartford Public Schools, we have PTOs, we have PTAs. Please join. There is childcare, there is food for for the children who come. There's also school governance council. Feel free to come and sit at those tables. Those are other tables before you come to this table. And just listen to hear what's happening, because if you just attend a meeting, you will hear, I guarantee, you will hear something that you have not heard before. You will find out some new information that you didn't know before, and you also have the ability and you have the skill set. There may be things that you are able to do that we cannot do. And that's another way to save money in Hartford Public Schools. You can bring your skill set, but engage, engage, engage.
Thank you.
Well, it is my absolute pleasure to be in this position. And I think part of what to me looks like accountability is, you know, I am your board member. If you vote for me and I'm your elected official, even if you don't vote for me, I'm your elected official when it comes to Board of Education stuff. My goal has always been, I come from the background of organizing and advocacy, so I've jumped the table to the other side of the policymaker, right? But that comes with a recognition of the importance of what community advocacy, organizing, and power building looks like. And with the best way, I think, when it comes to accountability, not just for ourselves, right? But if you're really passionate about conversations that we're going to be having, right? We know that the powers that be, there's agendas that are being made right now, whether at the national, state, or municipal level. We have to be able to fight those collectively. And the way that we hold each other accountable is by making sure that our community is holding us accountable, so we can turn around and say, our community this is not what they want. And this is where I've heard it from. A part of my job is to make sure that I am meeting you all where you are all at, right? To making sure that I am accessible to you all. We all have emails. Please email us if there's a listening session you need us to attend, or you need us to attend. Part of my job has always been to also connect to the parents we already have by attending the SGCs. One of the things that we've undertaking is making sure that we're visiting and that we're there, so that where you are, we are, right? If there are listening sessions that we need to put into place so that you are coming through and so that we're listening to you. Coming to the Board of Ed meetings is extremely important because we are taking notes and we are taking action on the things that we can and putting bullet points on the things that we need to come together to figure out together, right? And I hope as part of this work is that we begin to heal the relationship between our elected officials and the way that we do business in Hartford, because there has to be a level of transparency and a level of give and take, right? In the sense, like, yes, there's some parameters that we have to abide by, but there's so much power that we leave on the table. And part of that power that we leave on the table is the reality that there's more that we can do. I come from this work for fighting for public education. I am a firm advocate of public education, and I believe that every single one of us should have a right to a public education that is well-funded, well-resourced, and that it does not discriminate based on your zip code, your gender, your identity, your racial demographics, or where you live. And so for me, that looks like us being with you all in community spaces. It means you creating a space where you're welcome. We've always had translations at our Board of Education's meeting to at least Spanish, because we know how important that is for our communities, right? That is not something that is an afterthought, it's something that is always present. When we knew ICE we know ICE is a problem at the national level and at the state level. We immediately came together to figure out what policies do we have in place so we're not reactive, but we're actually being proactive. So I think for us, it's about how do we band together to make sure that we're listening to you all, that you understand the constraints that we may have. How do we work together to overcome those constraints for what the betterment of our young people look like? So that we're just holding not just ourselves accountable on the Board of Ed, but other legislatures. For me, I come from a place of doing community organizing and doing a lot of work at the legislative level. So this year I had a chance to do that by partnering with our lobbyists, partnering with our board members, making sure that we were there providing testimony, but most importantly, collaborating to bring parents in to provide testimony, to young people in to provide testimony, and create a much more robust power that when we show up, we're like 15 minutes away from the legislature, right? We can do more as a city, and that means we have to hold each other accountable to be in those spaces. For me, that means that I cannot be missing a legislative session where we are not doing strategy so that we are actually advocating and not leaving power and money at the table at the state level, in the same way that we're gonna ask for those resources at the city level. So I think part of that is just making sure we're in relationship and community with one another, and knowing that we have a lot of power that we can build together, and that starts with you all being at the Board of Education level, join the legislative task force, join our committees, right? And then, of course, come to the Board of Ed meetings. We'd love to have you, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. Tyron?
Hi, thanks.
Last couple minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank the Greater Hartford African American Alliance for putting on this program, the opportunity for us to talk to community. And the through line is we've shared with you at this moment, we need to hear from you. And we've heard that at a monthly meeting. And so we're, as a board, are going to create more vehicles to talk to you. Beyond the board meeting, I want us to extend community meetings and sessions, advisory groups, ways to let you talk to us more. We've also heard that you want your school-based experience to encourage your engagement. We've had a volunteering policy, and so we're also going to put an eye towards looking at enhancing your school-based experience. We don't run it, but we certainly can look at it to make sure that your time's not wasted when you volunteer, that somehow that you're finding ways to engage your local school, because that's really where this meets your needs at that very school-based level. In addition, we've talked passionately about improving this district, and while right at this moment, we aren't aligned because different parties can have different feelings. I'm committing as a board member that we will, the adults in the room, we're going to eventually have to speak with one voice. That at some point, both the executive, the board, and the council, we're going to have to speak with one voice, because there's no way for us to advocate at a state level, city level, at national level, really, on behalf of our district, if we can't get to one voice. And so I'm going to put out there that we are going to get there. It's work, but we will get there, because that's why you are depending on us to represent your interest.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for getting that out. I want to say, as a proud graduate of Weaver High School, yes, and a proud resident of Hartford, I am very proud and very honored to be here with passionate residents who are interested in serving and serving their community. We thank you for your commitment. We hope that everyone take this opportunity to go out and vote. Everyone here, you can actually go vote right across the street to at the City Hall. Those at home, you can vote now. You don't have to wait until November 4th. Tyron, Krista, Francois, Shante, thank you for your time. Thank you for your commitment to our students, people who invested in people like me when I went through the school system, and now you're giving back. We appreciate your time. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you learned something. I hope you take the opportunity to get involved, to participate. This is your community. This is your school system, and you have to step up and speak up and be a part of it if you want to see change. So thank you for allowing me to be your moderator today. Thank you all.